Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Search Engine Sessions. Today, myself and Ben Alfrey.
Hi, Ben.
Yep, our head of SEO. We are going to be talking about how you can go about building links to your website without actually asking for them.
Very
sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah, very different.
Doesn't sound possible.
Yeah.
Obviously, for those of you who have heard us speak or listened to the podcast before, we're obsessed with links in the fact that they're one of the driving factors which, if you acquire high quality links to your site from good and relevant domains, it allows you to rank above your competition in certain circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And what we talk about a lot is the outreach process and, the content you can create to outreach to publications and relevant blogs. But today we're going to be talking about how you can create content which allows these publications and journalists and other people to come and find you and quote you as a source without you actually having to go out and pitch it to them, because necessarily sometimes if you're an in-house marketer and you haven't got massive budget or you got some time constraints, then this could be a way in which you could start looking at outreach or creating content which acquires you links without that, not the brute force technique, but without scaling an outreach team or hiring an agency.
Yeah, well, I mean, SEO is hard work, but there's also two sides of the coin. The first one is you could be working for a relatively strong brand that's quite new to the whole SEO kind of stratosphere. They actually in turn have a strong domain rating, they're strong with their user base, with their audience base, but they've never actually focused on SEO. And then the other side is actually building that authority, becoming that go-to resource for your company, and actually creating that site that they have that kind of presence online as becoming that go-to for their audience and their customer base as well.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. So the first thing I want to talk about today is all about making your company a source for the industry. So you'll see it all the time, and it's like the intro stat. A lot of blog posts you read, even in big publications, will normally start with a stat. So if someone's talking about, Apple products, they'll start with a quote that says, 50% of the UK population use Apple products, and that will be hyperlinked and it'll be a source of some credible resource. That person, which they've linked to, which is probably a big website, hasn't gone and outreached for that link. What they've done is they've created that information which sits on their sites, and the publication or the journalist has gone and typed in how many people or what stats of people use Apple products. The journalist has then found that blog post, obviously seen the information there is relevant and insightful and useful and all that stuff, and then proactively quoted to it because it's useful. So you got to think about this from a way in how you can implement it in your own industry. So for us, we could do something like B2B marketing statistics or SEO stats, in the UK or whatever it may be, and then people who are journalists who are writing about SEO will type statistics in around SEO, they'd find us and then end up quoting our sources. And it's something that companies like HubSpot have done really, really well. I mean, I think their most linked to blog article is marketing statistics. So if you type in marketing stats, they have a long list of all the different types of marketing stats. And I think it's been linked to 9,000 different referring domains or people have linked to that page. It's just ridiculous because it just creates themselves as a all-in-one resource.
Yeah, and in turn you might actually have this information available. If I go back to the first example in which, let's say your site is an authority, but you've never focused on SEO, your company's been around for a while, and you've just kind of built up actually this natural kind of pool of authority, then digging into something like Search Console and finding really kind of long tail questions that are quite specific either to you or to your industry that may not show up any search on Ahrefs, for example. You then can start build content around that or build data to kind of answer or support that question as well. So you may actually have that information or have the kind of intel as to what someone's looking for already available there, and then you can start kind of building on it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's important. It doesn't have to be massively high search volume. I mean, this content isn't targeted at your customer or the consumer. It's targeted at other publications. So even if there's only 10 people a month looking for that, that's still 10 potential publications which are looking for the data which you're writing about. And if you can appear in front of them, then they're likely, or it's very possible that you're going to be accredited as the source for that, which is how the web should work. So say if you're in the food industry, one of the great ways to do keyword research to actually create content targeted at publications looking for that, intro line stat, let's call it, is you look at things like food stats or statistics or facts or how much. There's always a big thing around people always looking how much XYZ costs, and they want to reference that back somewhere. I mean, if you own like a gazebo company, for example, or a software company, doesn't matter what industry, you're going to have insight on how much people charge within the industry and, different stats along the lines of in different locations. Maybe it's different prices. If you can create this information and package it in a way which can easily be found by search engines, and that information is gold for people quoting for it, because we're always looking for stats to quote to make our work more credible.
Yes, for sure. And to add on to that as well, we love our engineering references here because I think it's such a kind of opposite side of the SEO coin. But we could identify that people are looking for how long does a compact all-free air compressor last for, or what's the lifetime cost of it over 3 years. A super kind of long tail search in which probably wouldn't show up on Ahrefs as having any search volume, but we can maybe see in Search Console, or we know that speaking from customers, this is a typical pain point, something that they want to know. So we can create content around that, and because of the low competition in the market, we will in turn start ranking for that, and then it will become the go-to resource for other sites and things like that. So there's always kind of a little seed, I think, somewhere in which you can get started with this.
No, definitely agree. And it hasn't always got to be primary data. I mean, it should be primary data, and the way in which it will work the best is if you do your own research and collate your own data or find a correlation or whatever it may be. But the biggest one, like I mentioned, with what they call HubSpot, that's the one. All they did was collate other people's research onto the same page, and that is a bit of a hack in the fact that they didn't do a lot of that data. All they did was became the go-to resource for everyone else's data, and then what they've kind of depended on is people not attributing the source correctly. So rather than going and actually linking to the original source, which did the study, because they're the ones that have collated it, and it's where people found it, some people can get a bit lazy when it comes to attribution, which in our eyes isn't the correct way to do it. But if you're a marketer trying to get links, then it could be definitely a low budget way of going and collating everyone else's data, and you will ultimately end up getting links because people don't know how to attribute it properly.
Yeah, of course. And you could in turn kind of say, when you link out to a site as well, that's going to flag up on one of their link crawlers or an Ahrefs scrape or something like that. But there's also kind of two approaches that we can take. Is that if we're looking at kind of demographic information, that information is probably going to be available, broadly speaking, if we're talking about the UK via the ONS or Google AdWords or something like that. If we're going kind of more company specific or very, very niche industry, then you may have that information in your CRM. You may have the sales data. You may have customer information in which actually is kind of stuck in a back end somewhere, and that you can actually create content and pull statistics out for that as well, and completely bring it new to world.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's got to be lots of different creative ways which I imagine some of the listeners can work out how they can create content. Anyone have any ideas or any interesting ways in which you've done it, then just definitely let us know. That'd be awesome.
No, for sure. And I was just going to add on, that this is kind of another kind of pro, get marketing to work with sales, get marketing to even work with, I guess the field sales guys, the guys that actually speak to your customers, the guys that crunch the numbers, the accountants, everyone that kind of has a touch point with the business or the customer or something like that. They're going to have intel that you can probably bring to the website that you can create content around. So, by and large, use it. The chances are you're probably sitting on a gold mine of something, but you just don't know it yet.
Yeah, for sure. So creating stats, becoming a source, try and get in that first line of people. And the great thing about getting a link in the first line of a blog as well is the fact that, there's definitely people out there that think that is the most powerful link on the page, isn't the first one. So, it's just not only you getting a link from a decent publication, you're getting a link from a publication right at the top where, people think it's weighted the most. I'm not sure that's ever been confirmed, but it's definitely
sounds about right.
It sounds about right. Yeah, let's go with that. Cool. So, second one is all around I've got written down here, making your content Instagrammable. And I think what I mean by that is when you create content which is seen a lot, ultimately there's going to be people out there reading your content who are going to want to use images or graphs which you've created for their own content, because obviously when people are creating their own content, a lot of people don't go and create their own images. They want to use someone else's image out there. So what you can do is if you design your, long form blog posts, have a nice infographic, have, beautiful graphs which illustrate content and sort of correlations and numbers, then people are undoubtedly, if they can find it, going to use that content on their own website.
Yeah.
And someone like Brian Dean from backlinko.com is sort of a master of this if you're looking for any actionable examples. He doesn't create lots of content, but when he does, he creates beautiful content, all designed power pages, and all of his graphs are used across every single marketing blog under the sun.
Yeah.
And therefore makes him one of the biggest authorities in the space, along with other reasons, obviously.
No, I completely agree. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that when we're creating content for publishers, for anyone to link to, there's always an element of ego and vanity around it. You could have the best data in the world and you could probably still get a story out of it. You could probably still get it written about. But if the design really doesn't step up to the plate, then the vanity, the ego is going to come into the publisher and they're not going to want to reference it. So, if you can make your design, which is completely in your control, absolutely incredible, mind-blowing, new to world stuff. For us, we always try and make our next creative best than the last, regardless of the type of creative, infogram, an infographic, a microsite or whatever. Then the publisher is going to feel far more inclined to actually want to reference it and find a way to kind of fit it in as well.
Yeah, it's a shock and awe, isn't it? So in any aspect, whether you want someone to find your content and link to you, or whether you want a customer to read your content and think, this is miles better than anything else that I've seen out there, then, that's how you build a loyal following and build links from the same piece of content. So it's all about a content strategy. Shouldn't just be words and, can you write a 10,000 piece article? It should be, how does my content look, and can it be Instagrammable in the fact that people do actually they're impressed by it, because it happens very rarely. It's very rare I see a piece of content that I'm impressed by.
No, of course. And I think YouGov's a good example in that everything's kind of always dressed up, so it's very, very easily digestible, as you say, kind of Instagrammable. You can see that stuff sort of being shared across the web, and that's kind of where you can add your value. We go back to primary or secondary research. If you are using secondary research and you're using stats from the ONS or Google Ads or whatever you're pulling this data from, your value comes from creating it in such a way that makes it easily digestible, so people actually want to share it, they want to put it onto their site.
No, definitely. And I think it kind of segues into the fact that it's not only about people finding your blog posts, it's about people finding the images you create. So every header image which you create for a blog post should be not a work of art, but it should be extremely, picture paints 1,000 words. Can you create an image which illustrates your point within, encapsulates that point just within the image? And then the amount of people, I think the image searches on Google are massively on the rise. I don't know what the exact figures are year on year, but I know that it's one of the places that people, like publications, do go out there, click image search, or type in their search query, and if they can find the image straight away, that's what they're going to be using. So if you can optimize your images for Google search, which is obviously things like the file name and alt tags, and making sure that links are being built to that page in itself, then you're in great stead to be seen from an image perspective.
Well, you can see that because the image is now far more prevalent in the SERPs as well. We had one example for one campaign in which we created a really long infographic that, thankfully for us got some really good traction, but we also created like a sub image that I think I even threw together on an old PowerPoint that didn't actually look that great, but we managed to also rank that image number 3 for the target term as well. So when you typed in the term, we had us at number 2, our kind of URL at number 2, but we had our image at number 3. And by and large, we actually found a lot, when you did a reverse image search, we found a lot more publishers actually just using that image purely because it explained the information in a nice, easily digestible square. And it gets picked up organically, doesn't it? Because then a big publication will use that image, then smaller publications, because the readers of that publication also have their own blogs and then pick up that image. Exactly. So if you can create something really nice and digestible in image format, then it's just, if you get one big placement, it's just going to trickle down. It's like the Pareto. Is it Pareto? Pareto's law, isn't it? The 80-20. So you get them in the top 20% of publications. 80% of the people that read them, also going to end up linking to them as well. I mean, that happened with one of our first ever infographics. Got it placed in social media today, and off the back of that, you got links from publications in which even if we did outreach, we couldn't have got placed in them because people aren't receptive to outreach necessarily at that level. But they did it because they came across it organically. So there's no downside to creating
beautiful content.
No, and I think
apart from the cost and time.
No,
but
of course.
Even then, it pays back dividends.
But I think that's part and parcel of SEO. If SEO was low cost, low barrier to entry, it'd be. I mean, it is saturated anyway with a lot of markets, but it'd be saturated to the point where there'd be kind of no real value in it anymore.
Yeah.
But I think it's always worth creating good images to really actually almost have like a mini image strategy with every piece of content you build. So you have your kind of alt text in place. You know, you kind of have a look at what sort of images are performing well and just try and create something that much better, because actually with image search ranking, I think it's far easier to kind of see your images start jumping up and for that to kind of go under the radar, and then in turn actually if it's quite an image focused keyword, such as you're looking for a statistic or a step by step or something like that, then you'll actually find that people are far more receptive to actually linking to those and using those for far more than maybe even clicking on your URL and actually scrolling down your web page.
Yeah, definitely. So as far as it goes, building links is definitely not an easy practice, and when it comes to SEO and the whole digital marketing sphere, I'd probably say it's one of the hardest things. We talk a lot about our link building process from an outreach perspective, but this definitely, I wouldn't say replaces the need to actually create content and reach out to publications, but it's something that should definitely supplement it, and the fact that it's the closest you're going to get to building links in your sleep, unless you have automated outbound sequences. But yeah, no, this is definitely a scalable way that, you know, you could not outreach it for 12 months and we're still building links for pieces of content which, you know, we've optimized for journalists finding them. So if you optimize it for around a search query which you know they have, or have a good idea that people, you know, are researching stats or, you know, facts around certain topics, and then, you know, once they found it, then they see your good image or, you know, your nice graph or whatever it may be. Sort of the two-step process: optimize for search or long tail search queries for journalists, and then secondly, you know, create beautiful content. Yeah,
I'd also add on, you know, if you've got 5-10% of your pages blog content bringing in most of your traffic, then go back to those pages and see how can I create images out of some of this content, some of the stats that we've got, and then you're only kind of improving your opportunity to get that link to as well. Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so I think definitely that's an amazing takeaway. If you have access to your company's analytics, go into your landing page report in organic and see which blog is driving the most traffic. See, one, if you can create an image which, you know, if people are reading that, 100 people a month are reading that blog, potentially one of them could be a journalist. Create an image in which that journalist may feel tempted to steal, or can you add any primary research to that thing also, which someone may be, you know, interested in sort of like repurposing and using and referencing on their blog. So definitely an actionable tip to take away from today if you take away nothing else. That's everything from me. Ben, do you have anything else to add on this topic? Speaking again.
Yeah, great to speak to you.
And you.
Speak to you next week. See you later, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.